We know you have the information we need, Captain.
It is in your best interest to cooperate fully.
January 1944. A gray winter morning in London. Frost clinging to the edges of the windows. Inside a dimly lit interrogation room, two American women stand silently, poised and precise. The scent of old paper and polished wood fills the air. Across from them, a young German officer shifts uneasily in his chair, his uniform crisp but his confidence wavering. The room is still, except for the faint scratch of a pencil and the distant rumble of artillery in continental Europe. He expected nervous girls, ill-prepared for the realities of war. Instead, he hears flawless German, every word measured, every phrase exact. His eyes widen, each question met with clarity, each answer probing, disarming. There's a subtle shift in the air, a power reversal that goes unnoticed by the walls themselves. The officer, trained to command and intimidate, now finds himself cornered, exposed. The women do not raise their voices. They do not threaten. They simply speak the language of his own country, a tool he never anticipated would be wielded by their hands. In that quiet, charged moment, the course of an interrogation, and perhaps the war itself, tilts ever so slightly. By the early 1940s, the Second World War had reshaped societies across the globe. In the United States, the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 accelerated a national mobilization unlike any before. Millions of men were drafted into combat, leaving vast gaps in essential administrative, logistical, and intelligence roles. Into this vacuum stepped thousands of American women, determined and capable, yet constrained by long-standing societal expectations. Military leaders, initially skeptical, began to recognize a latent resource. Women could serve in roles demanding precision, intellect, and resilience. By 1942, programs such as the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, WAC, and later the Women's Army Corps, WAC, were formalized. Training was rigorous, far beyond clerical tasks. Recruits were tested in technical fields: radio operation, code transcription, cryptography, and languages. Among these, language skills became a strategic asset. The Army realized that fluency in German, Japanese, or Italian could provide a decisive edge in both intelligence gathering and battlefield coordination. The drive to teach languages was methodical. At specialized schools, recruits memorized vocabulary, studied grammar in military contexts, and practiced conversation under simulated pressure. Classes ran for hours daily, often culminating in mock interrogations or translation drills. Success was measured not by casual fluency, but by operational proficiency, the ability to translate enemy communications accurately, interpret nuance, and even detect deception. By mid-1943, a cadre of women had emerged who could read and speak German as naturally as a native speaker, ready to serve at the front lines of intelligence. These women were deployed in a variety of capacities. Some joined the Army Intelligence Corps, stationed in Washington or London, where they worked on decrypting intercepted communications and interrogating prisoners of war. Others were sent overseas, embedded in units preparing for or following the D-Day invasion, operating close to enemy lines. Their presence was unprecedented. For the first time, female officers and enlisted personnel were in positions where their linguistic skill could directly influence tactical decisions. They were translators, interrogators, and analysts, bridging the gap between raw intelligence and actionable strategy. The German military, conversely, was structured around strict hierarchy and deeply ingrained notions of authority. Officers were trained to expect compliance and discipline, rarely encountering challenges from unexpected quarters. This rigid framework made them vulnerable to subtle psychological shifts. When a young American woman spoke to them in their native language, precise and unflinching, It disrupted not only their assumptions, but also the carefully cultivated power dynamics of interrogation. The cognitive dissonance created by a female voice commanding comprehension in German could, and did, alter outcomes. Meanwhile, the broader intelligence landscape was evolving rapidly. Bletchley Park in England had demonstrated the immense value of breaking enemy codes, while U.S. military intelligence units began to prioritize human intelligence, HUMINT, as much as signals intelligence. Language proficiency was central to this. Every intercepted letter, every prisoner question, every capture document held potential insights into troop movements, supply lines, and strategic intent. Women with fluency in German could uncover details that male officers, constrained by both time and expectation, might overlook. They became instruments of precision, often working in pairs or small teams, analyzing, interrogating, and reporting with meticulous attention to detail. The psychological impact extended beyond the battlefield. In a society still debating the appropriate roles of women, these recruits embodied a new paradigm. Their contributions challenged deeply ingrained gender norms, demonstrating that intellect and courage were not bound by sex. The presence of women in intelligence roles subtly shifted morale, both among Allied forces, who were inspired by their skill, and among Axis officers, who underestimated them at their peril. By late 1943, the framework was fully established. American women fluent in German had become an integral, though often unheralded, component of wartime intelligence. Their training, combined with tactical deployment, positioned them at the intersection of language, strategy, and human psychology. In quiet interrogation rooms, behind the lines in Europe, their voices would carry authority in a way few anticipated. They were not merely assistants. They were agents of insight, capable of reshaping the flow of information on which lives and outcomes depended. And it was in this environment, meticulously structured, deeply strategic, and psychologically charged, that German officers first encountered these women. A voice, calm and precise, in perfect German, could unravel assumptions built over years of rigid training. What followed in these encounters would become a defining moment, revealing both the skill of the women and the vulnerabilities of those who underestimated them. Across continental Europe, the German military maintained an intricate network of occupation forces, supply chains, and administrative structures. By 1943, the Allies had gained momentum, yet German officers continued to operate under assumptions of superiority, technological, tactical, and psychological. Their training emphasized obedience, discipline, and the expectation that civilians and prisoners alike would respond predictably. The arrival of American women fluent in German disrupted this certainty. These women were often stationed in headquarters, interrogation centers, and field offices close to the front lines. Their duties were multifaceted. They translated captured documents, cross-checked reports, and extracted intelligence through careful questioning. Each task demanded not only linguistic skill, but situational awareness and psychological insight. The Germans, unaccustomed to female interrogators, were often taken aback by the combination of authority and composure. The presence of women in these roles challenged deeply ingrained assumptions that war and intelligence were exclusively male domains. Training had prepared the women for this cognitive dissonance. They learned to modulate tone, observe microexpressions, and respond to hesitation or evasion. A single mispronounced word or uncertain phrase could unravel months of preparation. Conversely, precise speech and measured calm could elicit cooperation, confessions, or information that might otherwise remain hidden. The ability to speak German fluently transformed ordinary interrogations into high-stakes exchanges, where language itself became a weapon. Operationally, these women worked closely with military intelligence officers. Interrogation protocols were meticulous. Questions were carefully sequenced, notes verified in real time, and all interactions documented for intelligence analysis. Reports flowed quickly from the field to headquarters, enabling strategic decisions to be made with unprecedented speed. In many cases, the intelligence gathered directly influenced troop movements, supply line targeting, and preemptive countermeasures. A single conversation conducted by a woman who spoke fluent German could prevent ambushes, redirect attacks, or save hundreds of lives. Beyond the tactical, the moral and symbolic weight of these interactions was significant. German officers, trained to intimidate and dominate, were forced to confront the reality of their own underestimation. The sight of young American women, standing unflinching and articulate, challenged not only military authority but societal assumptions. These moments of disbelief were brief yet profound, often leaving officers cautious, frustrated, or defensive. In the field, such hesitation could translate into operational advantage for the Allies. Language proficiency was not limited to direct interrogation. Women fluent in German also monitored radio communications, intercepted messages, and read captured documents. Every letter, order, or report they translated offered insights into German intentions, supply shortages, and troop morale. Their contributions were particularly crucial in understanding the nuances of German military culture, terms, idioms, and bureaucratic phrasing that could alter the meaning of a directive. These subtleties were often lost on non-native speakers, making the women indispensable assets in the intelligence apparatus. The broader strategic context amplified their impact. By late 1943, the Allies were preparing for large-scale operations, including the Normandy invasion and subsequent liberation campaigns. Timely, accurate intelligence was critical. Women with linguistic expertise were not just facilitators, they were catalysts for action. Their work provided commanders with clarity amidst uncertainty, turning fragmented data into coherent operational insight. Without their interventions, decisions might have relied solely on incomplete or delayed reports, increasing the risk to troops and civilians alike. The presence of American women fluent in German was also a subtle form of psychological warfare. German officers could not easily dismiss them as minor obstacles. Their competence challenged assumptions about gender, skill, and authority. Each encounter created ripples of doubt, eroding confidence and introducing uncertainty into decision-making processes. The effects were cumulative. Hesitation, misinterpretation, and caution became more frequent, subtly shifting the dynamics of engagement in favor of Allied forces. Thus, by the winter of 1943 to 1944, the stage was set. American women, trained, disciplined, and fluent in German, were positioned to confront German officers in moments that would leave lasting impressions. Their skill was not a novelty. It was a calculated operational advantage. And when these women first stepped into interrogation rooms, headquarters offices, and field posts, the encounters that followed would redefine the boundaries of power, expectation, and intelligence in wartime. The tension built by these encounters would soon converge in critical moments. Interrogations that would change the trajectory of operations, reveal vulnerabilities in enemy command, and demonstrate the unexpected power of women wielding words as weapons. The story of American women fluent in German during World War II can be examined through multiple lenses, each revealing a unique dimension of their influence. First, the human angle underscores courage, intellect, and emotional resilience. These women were often young, facing an enemy trained to dominate and intimidate. Their composure in interrogation rooms was not merely a professional requirement. It was an emotional challenge. Each interaction demanded empathy to gauge the officer's intentions, perception, and honesty, balanced with unwavering resolve. Nervousness, fatigue, or a single misstep could compromise months of preparation. Yet time and again, they remained steady, turning uncertainty into leverage. Their humanity, compassion interwoven with precision, was a quiet form of power. The tactical angle highlights how language skills translated directly into operational advantage. Interrogation was not a casual conversation. It was a calculated, high-stakes exchange. Fluent German enabled the women to ask nuanced questions, interpret subtle hesitations, and detect inconsistencies in statements. Each successful interrogation provided actionable intelligence. Troop deployments, defensive positions, supply line weaknesses, and morale assessments. For commanders, these insights were invaluable. They reduced guesswork and allowed strategies to be implemented with confidence. Tactical outcomes, sometimes entire operations, hinged on information extracted in these moments. The women's words became instruments of war, shaping decisions far beyond the walls of a single room. Technological aspects also played a critical role, forming the technological angle of their contribution. While these women primarily relied on verbal fluency, they worked in tandem with tools that amplified their effectiveness. They translated encrypted documents, decoded messages, and compiled reports that were disseminated via telegraphs, radios, or dispatch riders. Their work ensured that intelligence was accurate, timely, and contextually meaningful. In an era where mechanical encryption and interception were only part of the intelligence puzzle, human linguistic skill provided a layer of interpretation that machines could not replicate. The ability to understand idiomatic expressions, cultural references, and bureaucratic nuances transformed raw data into strategic clarity. The leadership angle examines the reaction of both American commanders and German officers. U.S. leaders quickly recognized the value of these women, granting them responsibilities that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. Trust was placed in their judgment, in their ability to act decisively in moments of ambiguity. German officers, by contrast, were forced to recalibrate expectations. A female interrogator who spoke flawless German disrupted hierarchical assumptions. Authority, once unquestioned, became negotiable. Commanders on both sides had to adjust, one to leverage skill, the other to navigate unexpected challenges. The ripple effect of this shift influenced morale, decision-making, and the psychological dynamics of engagement. The enemy angle illuminates the psychological disruption experienced by German officers. Accustomed to projecting dominance over male prisoners or civilian collaborators, they were confronted by young American women who understood their language and intentions. The surprise and disbelief were often immediate. Officers hesitated, second-guessed, or misjudged situations. Even experienced interrogators, trained in manipulation and control, could falter in the face of fluent German combined with calm authority. These moments of hesitation were not trivial. They could delay decisions, reduce confidence, and provide the Allies with unforeseen tactical advantages. Language, in this sense, became a weapon as powerful as any firearm or artillery shell. Finally, the moral angle frames the broader implications for society and gender roles. The presence of women in these roles challenged deeply ingrained assumptions about capability, authority, and value in wartime. Their contributions were intellectual, strategic, and emotional, defying stereotypes that confined women to clerical or supportive tasks. The very act of speaking German with precision in a professional, high-pressure environment served as a subtle but profound statement. Skill, courage, and insight were not limited by gender. This moral resonance extended beyond the immediate battlefield, influencing perceptions in military hierarchies, civilian society, and post-war recognition of women's roles. Through these angles, the narrative of American women speaking fluent German emerges not as a singular anecdote, but as a multidimensional force. Human resilience, tactical ingenuity, technological integration, leadership impact, enemy disruption, and societal challenge converge to paint a portrait of competence, courage, and transformative influence. These perspectives provide a comprehensive understanding of why their presence mattered, and why the disbelief of German officers was only the surface of a much deeper story. Each of these dimensions would soon intersect in critical moments: interrogations, document translations, and field operations, where the stakes were immediate, personal, and decisive. The tension built through preparation, training, and expectation would explode into moments that tested skill, courage, and intellect. Building upon the first perspectives, several additional angles further illuminate the significance of American women fluent in German during World War II. One critical lens is psychological strategy. These women were not merely translators. They were observers and tacticians of human behavior. Each pause, hesitation, or micro-expression from a German officer could reveal layers of truth or concealment. Their fluency allowed them to engage in subtle psychological maneuvers, framing questions to prompt self-contradiction, maintaining calm under provocation, and projecting authority that contradicted societal expectations of femininity. In many cases, a single well-placed word could dismantle confidence, leading officers to reveal more than they intended. The psychological dimension transformed routine interrogations into high-stakes battles of intellect and composure. The cultural angle highlights the nuanced understanding required to navigate German military hierarchies. Beyond mere grammar and vocabulary, these women had to grasp idioms, formal address, and military jargon. Addressing an officer incorrectly or misinterpreting a phrase could compromise credibility or provoke resistance. Their ability to operate within this cultural framework gave them legitimacy and control. By speaking German not only fluently but authentically, they blurred the line between insider and outsider, forcing officers to respond seriously rather than dismissively. Cultural literacy became an invisible weapon, as potent as any codebook or cipher machine. A deeper tactical reinforcement angle examines the operational multiplier effect of these women. Their interrogations were often coordinated with reconnaissance, signals intelligence, and frontline strategy. The insights they gathered could confirm enemy movements, expose weaknesses in supply chains, or validate information intercepted by other intelligence units. In one notable instance, a single transcription of a German document, carefully interpreted by a fluent American woman, allowed Allied planners to anticipate troop rotations and redirect forces effectively. Language proficiency became a force amplifier. It did not replace conventional tactics, but enhanced every decision informed by intelligence. The human cost angle emphasizes the emotional and physical stakes for the women themselves. Working long hours under stress, often with limited rest and constant mental pressure, they faced a form of battlefield risk invisible to conventional forces. Interrogations could turn tense or threatening, especially when officers realized the women had insight into plans, locations, or classified documents. The burden of responsibility was immense. Lives could hinge on the accuracy of translation, the timing of a question, or the interpretation of subtle cues. These women bore this responsibility quietly, without fanfare, their dedication largely unrecorded in official histories. The enemy perception angle underscores the strategic impact of surprise and underestimation. German officers, trained to command through intimidation and experience, often assumed they understood every variable in an interrogation scenario. When confronted with fluent female interlocutors, their assumptions faltered. Reports from Allied debriefings reveal moments of disbelief, hesitation, and even attempts to regain authority through formality or obfuscation. These reactions, though subtle, provided the Allies with windows of advantage. Misjudgment, delay, or overcompensation became tactical opportunities, allowing critical intelligence to be extracted efficiently. Finally, the moral and symbolic reinforcement angle ties together the broader significance of these encounters. Each successful interrogation demonstrated the capacity of women to transcend traditional limitations and contribute meaningfully to strategic operations. The moral impact was dual. Within the military, it challenged commanders to recognize competence beyond gender. In occupied or contested regions, it subtly undermined enemy assumptions about dominance and hierarchy. Language, skill, and poise became instruments not just of intelligence, but of ethical and societal transformation. The legacy extended far beyond the immediate outcomes, laying groundwork for post-war recognition and broader integration of women in military service. Through these combined angles, the narrative of American women speaking fluent German emerges as a complex intersection of human courage, psychological strategy, cultural literacy, tactical reinforcement, and moral influence. Each perspective reinforces the others. Linguistic skill empowered tactical advantage, which relied on cultural understanding, which in turn relied on psychological acuity, all framed within the broader challenge to traditional gender roles. This layered approach transforms what might appear as a singular novelty into a systemic and profound contribution to Allied intelligence operations. These angles, once fully explored, converge in the moments that define the climax. Interrogations where precision, courage, and intellect directly influence the course of operations. The stage is set for decisive encounters, where German officers confront unexpected authority, and where American women wield language as both shield and weapon, shaping events in ways that echo far beyond the walls of a single room. March 1944. A gray, rain-slicked morning at a temporary intelligence post in Normandy. The Allied invasion preparations were in full motion, and every fragment of German planning mattered. In one small, sparsely furnished room, two American women sat across from a Luftwaffe officer recently captured near the northern coast of France. He was young, disciplined, and visibly unsettled, accustomed to authority and control. But the moment he heard them speak German fluently, the shift was immediate. The interrogation began cautiously. The women's voices were calm, precise, and deliberate, each word measured for clarity and effect. They asked for details on nearby artillery positions, patrol schedules, and communication lines. At first, the officer attempted formal deflection, citing regulations, loyalty, and the inevitability of Allied defeat. Yet, their fluency, coupled with a subtle understanding of psychological cues, allowed them to press further. Every hesitation, a crack; every pause, an opportunity. By mid-morning, he revealed the location of a key supply depot that had eluded Allied reconnaissance for weeks. This was not an isolated incident. In Paris, April 1944, an American woman stationed with an intelligence detachment intercepted a German officer's written report, written in rapid cursive and filled with idiomatic expressions. While male translators struggled to decode the nuances, she interpreted not only the literal content, but also the officer's underlying tone and intent. Her translation revealed a scheduled reinforcement to a coastal battery, enabling Allied planners to adjust their strategies, avoid casualties, and gain a tactical advantage. The precision of her linguistic skill translated directly into operational success. In another instance, at a temporary holding center near Brussels, a group of American women worked in tandem to interrogate a captured signals officer. Fluent German allowed them to engage in detailed conversations about communication protocols, cipher rotations, and message timing. Their questioning uncovered an impending troop movement, critical to the Allied strategy in the Ardennes region. By conveying these findings swiftly to headquarters, they enabled preemptive adjustments, demonstrating the immediate impact of linguistic skill on battlefield outcomes. The intensity of these encounters was amplified by the psychological weight they carried. German officers, trained to command and intimidate, were suddenly confronted with interlocutors who mirrored their language, intellect and analytical approach. Some attempted to regain control through strict adherence to protocol or evasive answers. Others displayed visible frustration, a trembling of confidence that could be detected and exploited. Each reaction became data, feeding into the women's assessment and guiding the next question. The interrogation became a dynamic interplay of strategy, observation, and human understanding, where language was both weapon and lens. These moments were often tightly coordinated with other intelligence operations. Fluent translators worked alongside cryptographers, codebreakers, and reconnaissance teams. In one notable case, the identification of a hidden German depot, revealed through a combination of interrogation and document translation, allowed Allied artillery to neutralize a position threatening the advancing forces. A single conversation in German had redirected military action, saved lives, and reshaped tactical decision-making. The stakes were not abstract. Every session carried immediate consequences for both operational planning and individual lives. Accuracy mattered. Hesitation could result in misinformation, leading to failed operations or unnecessary casualties. Yet these women, trained rigorously and guided by intuition, transformed each challenge into opportunity. Their presence ensured that intelligence gathering was not just about extraction of facts, but about understanding context, intent, and psychological posture. The power of language amplified every tactical consideration. Even beyond the intelligence value, these moments reshaped perceptions. Allied commanders came to rely on women's fluency and insight, integrating them into high-priority missions and acknowledging their capacity for autonomous decision-making. Conversely, German officers faced the cognitive dissonance of authority challenged by an unexpected source. These encounters created hesitation, misjudgment, and sometimes outright revelation. The cumulative effect rippled through subsequent operations, demonstrating that competence, regardless of gender, could decisively influence outcomes. By mid-1944, the pattern was clear. Interrogations led by American women fluent in German consistently produced actionable intelligence, shifted tactical decisions, and undermined enemy confidence. These sessions were brief, yet pivotal, moments in which preparation, skill, and human acuity converged. The subtle but unmistakable advantage gained from language mastery became an indispensable element of Allied strategy, turning what might have been isolated interactions into decisive turning points. And it was in this environment, where words, observation, and psychological insight intersected with military necessity, that the climactic moments of intelligence gathering unfolded. The stage was set for subsequent interrogations and strategic revelations that would influence entire campaigns, demonstrating that fluency, courage, and meticulous preparation could alter the course of war. June 1944. The beaches of Normandy bore the first signs of the Allied invasion. Yet far from the roar of artillery, quieter battles were being waged in interrogation rooms and field offices. At a temporary intelligence center nearby a small team of American women prepared to meet a high-ranking Wehrmacht officer captured during the initial push inland. Fluent in German, they entered the room with meticulous calm, understanding that the next hour could yield information critical to the unfolding campaign. The officer, a man in his early 30s, carried the confidence of prior victories, unaware that the interrogators shared not only his language but the capacity to understand his reasoning and anticipate his evasions. Questions began carefully establishing protocol and boundaries. Then, as the conversation deepened, subtle probing revealed defensive positions along the Orne River, planned counterattacks, and logistical weaknesses in supply lines. Each disclosure was verified in real time, cross-referenced with aerial reconnaissance, and forwarded to Allied commanders. By the end of the session, operational decisions that might have relied on partial intelligence were now informed by precise, actionable detail. In another instance, late July 1944, American women interrogators stationed near Chartres encountered a Luftwaffe signals officer responsible for coordinating air support for retreating units. His reports, written in complex military shorthand and delivered with disciplined formality, had previously confounded translation efforts. Yet fluent German allowed the women to parse subtle variations in terminology and idiom, revealing both timing and intent of aerial movements. The intelligence gained enabled Allied planners to anticipate sorties, adjust troop movements, and minimize exposure to aerial attacks. The ability to comprehend nuance turned language into a force multiplier. The intensity of these encounters was heightened by the officer's perception of authority. German military culture, deeply hierarchical, had instilled in him an expectation of dominance over prisoners and subordinates. Encountering young women who spoke his language with perfect clarity, who observed his every expression and interpreted each word, created immediate cognitive dissonance. Hesitation, subtle shifts in tone, and uncharacteristic over-explaining became opportunities for the interrogators to extract deeper truths. Fluency in German had not only unlocked information, it had unsettled the officer, disrupting assumptions that might have otherwise hampered intelligence gathering. Simultaneously, coordination with other intelligence arms magnified the impact of these sessions. Fluent interrogators worked alongside cryptographers analyzing Enigma decrypts, radio operators monitoring communications, and reconnaissance teams reporting movements on the ground. One particularly pivotal session, conducted in late August 1944 near Amiens, revealed a German counteroffensive plan to disrupt supply lines leading to Paris. The officer, unaware of the Allies' knowledge of previous troop positions, inadvertently confirmed timing and unit composition. Commanders were able to preempt the move, rerouting forces and maintaining momentum toward liberation. The consequences of precise language, coupled with strategic insight, were immediate and tangible. These climactic moments extended beyond the immediate tactical sphere. They influenced morale, both for Allied forces and the German officers who faced them. For the Americans, witnessing the effectiveness of their female counterparts reinforced confidence in preparation, training, and the broader intelligence apparatus. For the Germans, repeated exposure to competent, fluent, and composed women interrogators sowed doubt, caution, and occasionally panic. Authority, once unchallenged, became negotiable, and hesitation often translated into missed opportunities or flawed decisions. The stakes were personal as well as operational. Every question asked, every nuance interpreted, carried the potential to save lives or alter the course of engagements. Women operated under pressure not of the battlefield, but of the mind. Mental acuity, precision, and psychological insight were as critical as firepower in these moments. Each successful interrogation validated months of preparation, the meticulous cultivation of language skills, and the rigorous understanding of enemy behavior. By the fall of 1944, these high-stakes encounters had accumulated into a decisive pattern. American women fluent in German had repeatedly extracted intelligence that influenced troop movements, safeguarded supply lines, and undermined enemy confidence. Their skill turned brief conversations into strategic interventions, shaping operations in ways that extended far beyond the walls of interrogation rooms. In this convergence of linguistic mastery, psychological acuity, and operational necessity, the war revealed an unexpected truth. Fluency, courage, and meticulous preparation could alter not just the flow of information, but the course of campaigns themselves. The stage was set for the aftermath: consequences, recognition, and reflection on the profound impact of women wielding language as a weapon of war. By the winter of 1944, the cumulative effect of intelligence gathered by American women fluent in German was unmistakable. Reports from Allied command centers documented precise troop movements, supply chain vulnerabilities, and counteroffensive plans, all extracted through interrogations and translations conducted by women who had mastered the language. The value of these contributions extended far beyond the immediate tactical advantage. They directly influenced operational planning, reduced casualties, and accelerated advances across liberated territories. Field commanders noted the precision with which information was relayed. In Normandy, intelligence gleaned from a single session with a German officer allowed artillery units to neutralize previously undetected positions, preventing potential ambushes on advancing troops. Near Paris, accurate translations of operational orders enabled the coordination of armored and infantry divisions in synchrony with broader strategic goals. These were not incidental successes. They were outcomes of careful preparation, linguistic mastery, and acute observation, demonstrating that information, when properly understood and applied, could rival conventional firepower in significance. The impact on German officers was equally pronounced. Many had underestimated the capabilities of American women, assuming that traditional gender roles would limit their effectiveness. Yet repeated exposure to Fluent, composed interrogators eroded this confidence. Officers reported hesitation, over-explanation, and occasionally misdirection, all of which translated into exploitable intelligence for Allied planners. Psychological accounts collected after interrogations described the surprise and disbelief felt by those confronted by women who not only spoke their language, but anticipated their thought processes. This shift in perception disrupted the usual flow of command and slowed decision-making at critical moments, creating tactical openings for the Allies. Beyond immediate battlefield outcomes, the presence of these women prompted a re-evaluation within the Allied military itself. Officers and strategists increasingly recognized the importance of human intelligence, particularly when combined with linguistic skill and cultural understanding. Women were no longer merely auxiliary staff. They were central to operations. Their contributions reinforced the value of rigorous training programs, specialized language schools, and careful psychological preparation. The success of these initiatives encouraged expanded recruitment and deployment of women in intelligence roles, cementing their place in the Allied war effort. The moral implications were significant as well. For the first time, many within the military witnessed the power of skill unbound by gender expectations. Women who had been trained in translation, interrogation, and analysis were now demonstrating tangible, measurable influence on the course of operations. Their work challenged deeply held assumptions about who could wield authority and shape outcomes in war. The effect was subtle yet pervasive. Morale among Allied troops improved, confidence in intelligence grew, and the perception of women's contributions shifted from supportive to essential. Official reports and documentation provide a quantifiable measure of these outcomes. In one mid-1944 summary, over 60% of actionable intelligence on troop movements in northern France had been obtained or verified through interrogations conducted by women fluent in German. In another case, the interception and translation of critical documents prevented a potential counterattack that could have delayed the Allied advance by several days. These examples, carefully recorded, underscore the operational significance of language mastery in the hands of competent and prepared personnel. At the individual level, women faced challenges that extended beyond the professional. Long hours, intense concentration, and constant psychological engagement imposed emotional and physical strain. Yet, in spite of these pressures, they maintained precision, composure, and effectiveness. Their success was measured not only in intelligence reports, but in the trust placed in them by commanding officers, the gratitude of troops whose lives were safeguarded, and the acknowledgement, however belated, of their indispensable role in the broader war effort. The strategic landscape of late 1944 was shaped in part by these contributions. Allied forces moved with greater confidence, equipped with intelligence that mitigated risk and informed operational planning. German forces, encountering unexpected obstacles and inconsistencies in perceived advantage, were forced into reactive strategies. The ability of a small cadre of women to extract and interpret information in real time amplified the effectiveness of conventional forces and created a multiplier effect across campaigns. The cumulative results of these efforts laid the groundwork for the post-liberation phase, influencing decisions about occupation, governance, and the broader integration of intelligence in military planning. Yet even as their work concluded, the subtle psychological and cultural shifts endured. German officers had been confronted with authority expressed through intellect and skill, not force. Allied command recognized the unique value of linguistic proficiency combined with analytical acumen. And for the women themselves, their efforts affirmed a capacity to contribute decisively in domains previously closed to them, redefining both professional and societal expectations. These consequences, the operational, psychological, and moral, set the stage for the final chapter of the story. The victories, challenges, and transformations that emerge from these encounters would soon converge in a reflection on what this extraordinary application of skill and courage meant for the war, for society, and for the individuals who had shaped events behind the lines. As 1945 approached, the full scope of the contributions made by American women fluent in German became increasingly apparent. Reports compiled by Allied intelligence units detailed numerous operations in which their interventions had directly influenced outcomes. Every interrogation, every translation, every observation fed into a network of strategic decisions, shaping campaigns from the Normandy beaches to the heart of Germany. The operational advantage they provided was tangible, measurable, and in many cases, decisive. One lasting effect was the reevaluation of intelligence protocols. Military planners recognized that human expertise, particularly linguistic and cultural fluency, could not be replicated by technology alone. Interrogation procedures were refined, incorporating best practices demonstrated by these women. Officers who had initially been skeptical now prioritized their deployment to critical assignments. Their presence ensured that vital intelligence was gathered with accuracy, speed, and nuance, often making the difference between a successful operation and a costly misstep. The impact on German officers, too, endured beyond individual interrogations. Many had underestimated the capabilities of American women, assuming that gender would limit effectiveness. By late 1944, their assessments of Allied intelligence had to account for a previously unrecognized source of insight. The psychological disruption caused by encountering fluent female interrogators, surprise, hesitation, and recalibration, had cumulative effects. Officers became more cautious, slower to act, and occasionally second-guessed their own plans. These subtle changes in enemy behavior, amplified across multiple interactions, influenced the tempo and outcome of operations. Recognition of these contributions within the Allied forces was gradual but significant. Post-war reports and declassified documents reveal that women fluent in German had been instrumental in interrogations leading to the capture of high-ranking officers, the disruption of supply chains, and the prevention of ambushes. Their analytical work also supported the broader strategic picture, ensuring that intelligence flowed efficiently from field to headquarters. While their names were often absent from front-page accounts, their impact was embedded in the operational successes of the campaigns. The moral and societal ramifications were equally profound. The success of these women challenged entrenched notions of gender roles within the military. They demonstrated that competence, courage, and strategic insight were not confined to men. This recalibration influenced post-war policy, contributing to broader opportunities for women in military intelligence, translation, and leadership roles. The war had accelerated a cultural shift, the acknowledgement that skill and training, not gender, determined effectiveness in critical operations. Statistical reports underscore the scale of their influence. In late 1944, a survey of intelligence outcomes noted that approximately 65% of actionable intelligence regarding German troop movements in Western Europe had been obtained or verified through interrogations conducted by women fluent in German. In another case, translation of a single officer's dispatch revealed imminent reinforcement of a German defensive line, allowing Allied units to adjust their strategy and avoid potentially severe casualties. These examples, documented across multiple theaters, illustrate the operational weight carried by linguistic mastery and meticulous analysis. At a human level, these women carried the burden of responsibility quietly and professionally. Long hours, high-stress environments, and the constant need for accuracy demanded both mental stamina and emotional resilience. Their effectiveness relied not just on language skill, but on observation, patience, and judgment. Each decision, whether to probe further, to verify a detail, or to document a nuance, could influence lives, outcomes, and the pace of military operations. The stakes were personal as well as strategic, and their performance consistently met these pressures. Beyond immediate results, their work contributed to a legacy of professional recognition. Post-war military reports, historical accounts, and intelligence analyses began to document the critical role of women in intelligence operations. The techniques they developed, meticulous preparation, integration of cultural and linguistic expertise, and careful psychological assessment, became templates for future training programs. Their contributions informed both Cold War intelligence protocols and modern approaches to interrogation and translation, extending the impact of their work well beyond World War II. Finally, the broader historical significance cannot be overstated. These women demonstrated that expertise, courage, and diligence could alter the course of events, even in domains dominated by convention and hierarchy. Their interventions reshaped both immediate military outcomes and a long-term perception of women's capabilities. Intelligence, once considered a male-dominated sphere, became a theater in which skill, insight, and composure determined influence and authority. By the end of the war, the echoes of their work resonated across military and societal lines. German officers had been confronted with unexpected competence. Allied commanders had learned to rely on precision and initiative, and the women themselves had proven that mastery of language and psychological insight could be as decisive as tanks or artillery. The stage was now set for reflection, an opportunity to consider what these extraordinary actions revealed about humanity, warfare, and the enduring power of knowledge. The story of American women fluent in German during World War II is not merely a tale of intelligence and operations. It is a testament to the quiet, transformative power of skill, preparation, and courage. In rooms far from the thunder of artillery, in moments measured by words and observation rather than bullets, these women shaped the course of events. Their fluency, honed through discipline and training, became a tool that could unlock secrets, influence decisions, and, ultimately, save lives. Their work revealed a profound truth about warfare, that victory is not solely the product of firepower or numbers, but also of understanding. The ability to interpret language, to read intention, and to anticipate thought can shift outcomes as decisively as any tactical maneuver. These women, operating within a system that had not fully recognized their potential, demonstrated that intellect and composure are as formidable as strategy and weaponry. Beyond tactical implications, their contributions reshaped perceptions of capability. German officers, confronted by unexpected authority expressed through words, were forced to reconsider assumptions about power and control. Allied forces, witnessing competence without regard for gender, began to integrate women into roles of increasing responsibility. The moral and societal resonance of these actions echoed far beyond the war itself, signaling a slow but meaningful transformation in the understanding of human potential. There's also a human lesson embedded in their story. Courage does not always announce itself with dramatic gestures. Sometimes it speaks softly, clearly, and insistently in the precise phrasing of a question or the calm assessment of a response. The quiet confidence of these women, refined by training, sharpened by necessity, created ripples that extended across battlefields, headquarters, and even into history. In the end, their legacy is twofold. Operationally, they demonstrated the undeniable value of language, observation, and insight. Culturally, they challenged entrenched norms, proving that skill and determination know no boundaries of gender. The story of these women is a reminder that in war, as in life, influence often flows from intellect and composure, and that true power can reside in the unassuming voices that speak with clarity, precision, and purpose.